I'm thinking more in terms of like, yeah. Like I understand what you're saying. Like in terms of like just like using the tools we have to enhance the source versus like I'm thinking about like I don't know Phineas throwing Billie Eilish's voice through some crazy like warping effect or.
Okay. Yeah,
But I guess it's less of that. Yeah.
Well, with metal vocals, there's all kinds of shit you could do. Honestly, like there's great ways to you could throw like a freaking devil lock on it. Like I love saturation on brutal vocals. Like any kind of brutal vocal, it just brings out the grit, it actually brings up the volume. That's another thing I love about saturation. It's like it's also like devil lock is kind of like it's a distortion, but it also feels like it's kind of like a limiter or like a clipper. It brings up the volume, like the apparent volume, and it just absolutely like throws it like on top of the mix. It just absolutely like pushes it through like a shark fin in the mix when you put a lot of saturation on something. So that's great for vocals. I find myself doing a lot of different kind of atmospheric reverbs to put it in a space, like to put it in like there's a track I just did that I sent you yesterday for this band called Siglos, and the metal vocal.
We'll hear this like, in the Saw segment later on, people. So.
Yeah, like the metal vocal it's actually the vocal chain I explained earlier is exactly what I used on him, and I felt in the mix like it was already really powerful without any kind of delay and reverb, but adding a little bit of. I added like I believe it was like a chamber reverb or an arena reverb or something, just subtly underneath it. And then I think I automated reverb. See, like I like to automate more effects and atmospheric things than the actual main vocal sometimes volume. Because it just creates a different, creates a different space, a different atmosphere, like during certain parts of the song, rather than just, okay, I turned the vocal up in the chorus, but that's all. It's like, well, if you just put it in a different space or shift the environment a little bit, that can be more of a jarring thing or more of like more noticeable,
Interesting. Yeah. Effects are huge. Yeah. And also I find that Devil Lock is like that kind of perfect plugin to do something like if something needs a lift and you just aren't sure what else to do with it, try the Devil Lock. It's perfect for like
that one. Yeah.
For those random things. Okay, yeah, but so you've kind of walked us through like different ways you mix and approach, producing and mixing metal. Do you think that you do something that you could maybe call a trademark sound that people come to you specifically for, or is maybe your thing more of like being the right fit for whatever the song is and trying like blending to that song specifically? I guess chameleon would be the word. What do you think? What would you say? And if so, if you do have a trademark sound, what would you say that is?
Yeah, I feel like I know what it is, but I'm still trying to figure out, because to me, it's more about what people see it as, because you can't control, obviously, like you could try your best to be the most amazing pop vocal mixer ever, but no matter how hard you try at that, if there are other things you're doing maybe subconsciously, like in every mix, that is more noticeable to the audience than even to yourself. I feel like sometimes it's really hard you can't really control, like, in my opinion, what you're known for sometimes, or how people are attracted to your work. So for me, I think I like to bring a really dark atmosphere to most of my work. Like I'm all about really huge, heavy guitars, and I like to use a lot of synths and orchestral scoring kind of sound design aspects wherever I can. And I like to make it larger than life, kind of like cinematic. I'm not afraid of throwing like risers, like every other snare or something, like just adding like all kinds of different cinematic things subtly underneath the mix, sometimes subtly, sometimes not so subtly. But I just like to create environments instead of just, okay, I mixed your track and didn't really add anything to it. Like I like to, as long as the artist is cool with it. There's been occasions where like maybe I felt like, okay, I'm going to add like a kind of like a haunting pad underneath this verse just to change it up, because both verses are exactly the same. Like there is really no attempt by the person who recorded or wrote the song to like make either the verses different. So I was like, okay, well, let me try something here. Let me just do something to make this second verse sound different than the first. So sometimes I'll throw in some pads or some different kinds of synth sounds just to like spice it up a little bit. But there's been times it hasn't happened. It's only happened like a couple times, I would say, since I've started doing this in my career. But there was one time where I just added this like subtle kind of eerie synth to a verse, and because the first verse sounded exactly the same, so I was like, let me give this a shot. But the artist was like, hey, I noticed there's some weird like haunting like movie sound going on under the second verse, and yeah, I didn't add that. I don't know how that got there. I was like, okay, crap. So I just deleted it, or I muted it and sent it and did a different mix. But most of the time, the artist is like super excited about anything I might add to the mix.
Yeah, it's so cool. It's I've done it a few times where I've added a couple things, and like I feel like you have to know your audience. You have to know like if they're not expecting it, maybe to warn them, or if sometimes they'll be pleasantly surprised if you have like a working relationship with them. I feel like it depends. Like but it's totally a move, and it gives you like that extra kind of like added value that you're providing to the artist.
Yeah, I would say that's a big part of what I like to bring to the table. Like not only like if you hire me to mix and master your song, the most likely I'm going to be doing more than that. I'm going to be adding some production things. And I think that's kind of become another thing with metal. Like that's almost expected now. It's almost like when someone hires you to mix or master, like a lot of these bands, they'll expect, oh, well, he's going to add sub drops. He's going to add whatever, like, you know, and for me, that's true because I love adding that stuff to the mix. But it just seems like too, like, you know, the production roles are kind of, you know, meshed together, especially in metal.
It seems like all the lines are blurred in the work that you're doing, at least in the genre that you're working in. Yeah,
I think in most genres too, because I think there's a lot of artists that I get this problem a lot. Like I just had a release a couple days ago, and sometimes there's just a misunderstanding. So it's like, you know, I engineered and produced the track and mastered it. We had it mixed by Tim Palmer, and I did a lot of the production and engineering. But like sometimes the artists will, and it's not like I get why they will mention the bigger known engineer, because Tim Palmer is like huge. I don't know if you know his work, but he's an absolute legend.
I looked him up actually.
Yeah, but like the artists will. Sometimes they put like produced and mixed by Tim Palmer when, you know, the artist and we actually produced it, you know what I mean? And we had Tim mix it. And it's like sometimes there's just misunderstanding about the roles and like what each part of the process means.
Yeah.
So it's like that's another big thing is like communicating credits and all that. That's a whole other conversation.
I think the onus is on us to educate the artists that we work with about how different things are. And I feel like as I start to understand what mastering is more than I used to, like as a producer, me explaining that to the artist, I think is like super important education, right? Like, you know, somebody who doesn't master his own mixes, but like, it's like, I feel like the education part of the producer role is like underratedly super important.
Oh yeah.
And I feel almost most like a producer when I do that. Like when I'm explaining to the band like what mastering is bringing to the table, I feel like a producer. Like all of a sudden, like even though I just mixed the song and it sounds great, like now I feel like a producer. Now that I'm explaining to you how we're going to get to the finish line and what that looks like,
right?
And what all these processes are and even though the lines are blurred, maybe.
Yeah, I just think like even there's some. It's just been over time, like the role of the producer has changed so much. Like in some people, like no matter how much it's explained, like there's some people that they always feel like the producer is just like someone who shows up and says, like sits on the couch and says, hey, maybe like switch up that verse and move the bridge a little bit, and then leaves, like like the old school kind of producer, right? Someone that doesn't even touch Pro Tools or touch any gear. They're just there to like observe the project and whatnot. So some people consider that a producer. Some people consider a producer as someone who does everything from start to the end. Some people think a producer is just the person that fucking adds, that comes in and maybe just brings their opinion about arrangement and songwriting. Like it's all over the place. So like I do when I can, like I like to talk to artists, like, cause a lot of artists, they already have their, they've been doing it for so long. They already have their idea of what the roles are. And that's great. But yeah, sometimes it can get a little bit, blurred. So it's still a bit of a struggle, but like I think, like you said, as long as, if the conversation needs to come up, we can, explain and do our part as a producer to let the artist know.
Do you find like you're able to help these artists, try to prevent the artists that kind of just release something amazing and then disappear into the ethers? Like, do you find that you're helping them kind of figure out release strategies, anything like related to kind of like when you're done working on the song?
Actually, yeah. I mean, I just partnered up with a publicist. Her name is Raquel Figlo, and she's worked with quite a few of my artists now. Like a lot of my clients, I just refer people to her who might not be so sure about how to get a feature in an online, like Metal Injection, or there's all these different sites and online places for releases and premieres and all that. And it's not so easy to get featured in that unless you know what you're doing. So I'll just, I refer a lot of my artists to her, and she's been great, and she's helped me with some of my personal music as well. But yeah, I do feel like when the occasion may rise, I like to, like, hey, you need help. What's your plan to promote this? What's your plan to get this out into the world? Like, oh, we don't really know. I'm like, okay, well, maybe you should talk to Raquel, just so I really want to help everyone I work with, and even people that I'm not working with, like, cause I'll get inquiries and I'll be like, hey, maybe I'm not the right person for this, but maybe so-and-so can help you. Or maybe if you need need a feature, like, go to Raquel. So I just want to help everybody, do the best work they can and put out the best music they can and have it actually be heard,
see the light of day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amen to that, man. It's so important. Also, like, referrals are awesome. It's like so great. Like, I love handing work off to somebody I know will take care of, whoever came to me, and that just builds trust between everybody,
Yeah.
And that's like so important also for community, like the other local guy that I can like send business to when I can't do it, or if he's a better fit than me, like that stuff is great.
Absolutely.
Big fan of that. Awesome. So I think this is a great opportunity to head over to the Sauce segment. And you already mentioned this song on the air called Morir para Vivir, which is by a band called Siglos, which you talked about working on the vocal there. And so you sent me this song for the Sauce segment. So let's have a listen to this for about 90 seconds and we'll chat about it. Sound cool?
Sweet. Yeah.
Man, that is something. That wow, that's really cool. I love how the energy shifts